Of working with many of you. Ryan Hayashi, Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer, and I've had the fortune of working with many of you on the implementation of the South Central Community Emissions Reduction Program and Community Air Monitoring Plan. So this is a conversation. It's kind of a follow-up to the conversation that was begun at our last Community Steering Committee meeting, discussing a measure that was prioritized by the community, with a desire to see the transition begin for moving from diesel heavy-duty trucks to zero-emission trucks. And during the presentation that was given to the community, we gave the background on the program that had been launched already, the opportunity that was already available. Once the Community Emission Reduction Program had been approved by the CARB, that funding was available for people that wanted to take advantage of transitioning their diesel vehicles to EVs. Since that's happened, that program has been open now for several years, and we haven't been able to find interested parties to take advantage of that program. And so we went on a kind of a fact-finding effort to engage with local businesses to understand why there wasn't an interest in transitioning. And from those conversations, it was pretty apparent that the state of EV trucks, there was just a general concern about if we were to give up vehicles that compliant vehicles with state requirements that depending on the type of business and the operation, that there could be significant issues should that equipment have any mechanical issues, problems, which may result in them not being able to satisfy contracts and make deliveries, and could potentially significantly damage those businesses. And so that was some of the feedback that we were getting. So after that, we kind of explore what was going on across the state, and to kind of has this issue already been addressed. And that's where we found the project plan that the San Diego Air Pollution Control District had worked with the California Air Resources Board, and had gotten it approved as a community identified project to fund the purchase of a electric vehicle without the requirement to follow that up with scrapping a vehicle. And so, talking with some people, there was some interest in a program like that. It removes some of the uncertainty should there be any mechanical failures, while at the same time there was provisions in there that would require that a certain amount of miles be replaced with the equipment that would be added to those fleets. So there's an assurance that you're also you're getting emission reductions. It's not just that you're adding onto a fleet, but there's actually emissions reductions through the vehicle miles traveled of the new vehicles in those communities. And so that's kind of the background on this. And so what we were looking to do is to talk about this measure with the steering committee. We have some details on a potential project partner that is very exciting, because that was one of the questions was, well, are there people that are actually willing to do this if the program is opened? And so we're going to provide some information on that project, and then want to hear the feedback from the community steering committee members and others about this opportunity, really, to see transformational change in the way that goods are delivered. And it's definitely, we believe, one of those situations where for this to be successful and for people to be more open-minded about transitioning before requirements kick in 10 plus years down the road for some of these, you need some of these success stories to show that it can be done, that it can be effective, and it's possible, it's feasible. Like all those things, showing real world examples of that, I think is really what we're trying to do with this program. To then spur on other people to make those same changes. So I don't know. At this point, I guess we could share about the project partner information that if the community were supportive of submitting this to CARB, and what that may look like. So,
thanks, Ryan. This is Todd DeYoung, the district's director of grants and incentives. Pleasure to see you all this afternoon. So as Ryan talked about, we do have a potential project in mind. This project came about actually sort of in a roundabout way. The district worked with a couple of partners a year and a half, 2 years ago on a CARB and CEC grant solicitation opportunity to deploy and demonstrate zero emission trucks in the Valley. We had 2 projects that were selected. One of those projects ultimately ended up backing out, and we had the opportunity to select a backup project for that grant so that we could ensure that we kept that funding here in the Valley and made sure that it went to Valley businesses and demonstrating those zero emission trucks here in the Valley. And so we did find a new partner that was willing to make a significant investment on their own to make this project work, in combination with the state funding, both from CARB and CEC, as well as potentially some funding through the AB 617 program, which is sort of the tie-in here this afternoon, which is why it's critical to kind of talk about some of these issues and if we can get some concurrence on a path moving forward. So the project is with OK Produce. OK Produce is a local business working here in the Valley and been operating in the Valley for decades. They have committed to purchase and demonstrate and operate 50 zero emission Volvo trucks, all electric, battery electric trucks. These trucks are located at their facility, which is actually inside the boundaries of the Fresno AB 617 community. It's located at 2012 South Pearl Street in Fresno. So if any of the committee members know where that is, that's within the community boundaries. So these trucks will be operating in and around the AB 617 community. Obviously, they won't spend all of their time in the 617 community, but they're based in that facility and will be operating in and out of that facility on a daily basis. This represents more than half of their trucks in their fleet that they're willing to convert to electric to demonstrate. They have a significant investment of their own to assist with the purchase of these trucks, as well as the installation of the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, which is a huge part of the project as well. So the idea in this project was to sort of cobble together multiple funding sources to really make this work. Let me see what percentage here. About 25% of the total cost is being paid for by OK Produce. And that represents about $7 million. So it's a $7 million investment from this local company within the community. So, in all of our grant programs, generally speaking, we like to see commitment from the applicant. We want to make sure they have some skin in the game and that they're committed to the project and that they're willing to invest, some of their own funding, so that some of their own funding, so that they're really invested in the project, and it's not just all grant funding. So in this case, they're putting up a quarter of the funding. About 46% of the funding is coming from the grant from CEC and CARB through the demonstration program that we were approved for, and that we've been working with to sort of secure that funding. And what we would be proposing is to use about $6.5 million of the allocated funding for zero emission trucks in the Fresno area. And then there would be another 1.5 million that we would be using from another district operated funding source, not the AB 617 funding, but we would be looking to propose $6.5 million of the AB 617 funding that's been allocated to zero emission trucks. And as Ryan talked about, it's been available for several years now, and for a variety of reasons, we haven't had anybody that's really wanted to step up and take advantage of that funding. And for the reasons that Ryan talked about, the technology is still new enough, and there's just that bit of uncertainty that we're still dealing with. And so in order to make the project work, what's been requested is that instead of in a normal truck replacement situation, the person getting the new truck or the company getting the new trucks would have to destroy or dismantle or recycle their old trucks. So they basically have to get rid of those trucks. In this case, recognizing the fact that this technology is still fairly new, and they want to make sure that it works for their duty cycle, their business case, and they have to continue to move product. And so they have to ensure that they have trucks available. And so the idea here is to not require those existing compliant trucks. These are trucks that are compliant with the statewide regulations. So they don't have to do anything with these trucks right now. They're already in compliance. But it would be to allow them to keep those trucks for a period of time while they're demonstrating this new technology. And until they become comfortable with the technology, until they make sure that it works for the duty cycle that's involved in their business operations, make sure that there's no issues with range and charging and their ability to operate these as they need to successfully run their business. So what we've done is, and it's been done in other parts of the state, is we're proposing to submit a project plan or an amendment to the existing truck program criteria that are already in there in the community air protection guidelines. And we're going to basically eliminate or at least put aside the requirement to scrap those existing trucks until such time where everybody is comfortable with the technology. They make sure these things are working properly and can handle the duty cycle that's involved in OK Produce's operations. And so that's kind of where we are now. We're proposing to make a change from requiring that scrappage right away to putting that scrappage off for a period of time until they become comfortable with that, basically not requiring that scrappage as part of getting the funding for these new electric trucks. And we're proposing to submit that. Again, it's been done in other communities throughout the state, so this is not a new concept. And we would just be sort of using what's already been approved in other areas of the state to make this happen. I'll stop there. Janine, anybody else? If I've missed any key points, please feel free to jump in. But I'd be happy to sort of start the discussion, field any questions or concerns that the community might have.
Real quick, I just want to point out that there would still be remaining funds for trucks outside of this project with the amount that we were proposing.
Great point.
And just like hoping that seeing a large company, a large fleet, put this into practice, that, like we said, that spurs interest by other people to take the opportunity with some of the other funds to also look to make these transitions and test it out, and hopefully see that it works for them, and that there's a lot of benefit to making these transitions. And it seems that OK Produce has a history of trying to be good stewards and trying to be at the forefront of experimenting with green technology, and so I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why they're interested in being kind of trailblazers in this area, and kind of making that leap.
So do we have any questions or concerns or comments about the proposal, or about our project plan, or about the changes that we are proposing to make to the AB 617 funding?
I see Isabel has her hand up.
Sí, por error levanté la mano.
Oh, I'm sorry. I raised it up by accident. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Natalie?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Todd and Ryan, for that. I just have just like a couple of questions, and I think one of my main questions is like, in terms of the timeline for like eventual scrappage of like these diesel trucks, has that been proposed, or like what would that timeline look like, right? Because we eventually do want these um these owner operators to transition to zero emission vehicles, but I was just wondering, like, eventually when would that scrappage take place?
It's a great question, and I think it's still something we're trying to work through. We don't have a specific date in mind. We're thinking, and this don't quote me on this, but we're thinking sometime between 12 to 18 months is a good amount of time at this point, although I think we still need, it needs some further discussion with OK Produce as these trucks come online, and they're not all going to come at one time. So these trucks are going to be phased in. So we want to make sure that there's a good understanding of how the business is operating, how it needs to operate, and making sure that it has all the flexibility that it needs to be successful. So it's a good question, and we're of the same mindset that obviously we want these diesel trucks eliminated as quickly as possible, but we want to make sure that we're not cutting anybody's legs out from under them, and making sure that they're that these trucks do actually work for their business and they're able to handle the duty cycle. So it's something that we're continuing to talk about with OK Produce, and that will be sort of one of the points that we really push on to make sure it's as quickly as we can get those trucks replaced.
Yeah, I think the other component to that, because it's been a concern that we've heard about and put some thought into. I mean, we've definitely put in reporting requirements that the people would show how much the new vehicles are being used, and at the same time the reductions in mileage in other trucks, so that we can quantify the emission benefits from these types of projects would be a very important part of this.
This is Janine. One more thing I'd like to add to that is that while we're talking a lot about OK Produce, there is still going to be a portion of the funds for other fleets, and smaller fleets may actually need more time. OK Produce has already taken on a couple of zero emission trucks, so they've kind of gotten their big toe wet, so to speak, in the technology. But if we work with additional fleets that maybe this is their first ever zero emission truck, they might need a little bit longer time to transition out. So I think to Todd's comment and Ryan's in providing flexibility as you know, we want to make sure that these companies are successful in that transition and can present back to other fellow businesses that success to help promote the transition across the board.
Looks like Bill has his hand up.
Yeah, so if I understand, the same opportunity, the same basic will be available for other companies as well. Because I think it would be a good idea if this is approved that different types of trucks be utilized, because just to have all that information gathered from, say, one type of truck tractor type, where what I foresee as being a problem is trucks that utilize like PTOs and so forth. It's going to be a lot more difficult, for example, for a garbage truck, to transition over to an electric truck. It's going to take, I think, more trial and error. And, with, so many trucks that run PTOs, whether it's a fire truck or a water truck or fuel truck or, garbage truck or tow truck or anything. There's just so many different configurations that without having a PTO available is going to be a problem. Now, some of I think there are PTOs available, and some manufacturers, are still working on software, to integrate the electric PTOs. But I think that's going to take a lot more effort on the part of, the trucking companies and so forth to make that work, because it's much more complex than just running a 3-axle tractor, pulling a semi-trailer down the road.
Hey, Bill, this is Janine. I think you've got some great points there. And I think in our experience with recent ride and drive events by several of the manufacturers, there's probably a lot of sectors that are PTO type of trucks that aren't ready yet to transition because the technology is not ready for those types of equipment just yet. So I think with this project plan, we're really looking at focusing efforts on the vocational styles that the equipment is currently ready to go with. I know you mentioned garbage trucks, refuse trucks. There are some out there, and they are in operation, but they are quite expensive. And so most of the refuse companies aren't quite ready yet at $750,000 a piece to swap out refuse trucks. But there are some other vocational styles, especially in the smaller weight classes, class 4, 5, 6, even 7s, that the current technology is very well suited for. And I think our focus in this project plan is really try to target those that are truly ready for that deployment within those selected vocations.
Do you know if they extended the date to transfer? Are PTO trucks now coming into play in 24, or did that get extended to 2030?
Well, it depends on what type of fleet they're in. So the Advanced Clean Fleet regulation is targeting very specific fleets. You've got drayage, obviously, state and local agencies, which I would imagine there probably are some PTO driven trucks there, but there are several things within the ACF that provide extra time and allowances for specific vocations or styles of equipment that are not ready by the manufacturers yet. So I don't know. I thought I saw a few CARB folks on today. I don't know if anybody is versed on the ACF from CARB that's on the call today, but there are definitely, CARB is definitely aware of the fact that technology is not ready for every type of vocation yet and has tried to build into the ACF those allowances.
Yeah, that's a problem. See, is a lot of us are being grouped into that advanced stage where we have to start converting next year, 2024, and every single one of my trucks has a PTO on it. So if I'm going to have to comply, we need to start working on how that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably a conversation, not necessarily for this project plan discussion, but definitely with CARB and the manufacturers as to when they anticipate that type of equipment to be ready, available, and deliverable.
Well, my point is they may have it available, but is it going to work? And so my point is to have the same type of situations where you don't have to get rid of your old truck in order to utilize this program and this meeting. And like you said, how expensive they are, so unless, I think it would be a good idea if you have enough money available for if different trucking companies or whatever want to start buying into some of these special applications, which they're going to have to, like 24, if you have, depending on how much revenue or how many trucks, you have to start next year. So we don't have, unless more people are going to try, and I would rather try on your dollar than mine to make sure it's going to work before it gets to the point where you have to order a whole fleet.
Yeah, and
you mentioned how much they're costing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, hey, Bill, I think you're bringing up a great point, and it's just one of the many issues that we're going to be facing as these regulations take effect. And I really appreciate Jennifer sharing that she'll do some research on her end, and we'll provide information out that we'll be sure to forward on to the subcommittee.
Yeah, because if you could just reserve at least a portion, and maybe you have plenty, to focus on the same type of setup for some of these specialty trucks, so that we don't get down to the point where we have to be compliant and it's unproven technology.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Ivanka? Ivanka, it's really hard to hear.
Is this better?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
One of the questions I have is kind of like, might be more to Bill or Nazreen, but this is supposed to be community money. And you had said originally, Ryan, that the original plan of this CERT measure, nobody responded. Are you saying that the only one that responded to the original plan, was that really what started this conversation with OK Produce, or is the original CERT measure just completely scrapped and we're just trying something new? Like, how did we get from nobody responds and now we're just putting all the money into one business? When I don't know how big, Bill, your company is, but one of the concerns that we had was who is going to have as a business a harder time transitioning to the requirements of CARB and our California, a bigger conglomerate or the mom and pop and the smaller trucks. So when I came into this call, I'm expecting to talk about some of those details of, well, not just presenting OK Produce, but a plan that somebody else could have applied to besides OK Produce. Because if there's smaller companies, we know it's going to be harder for a smaller company to get up to par to the requirements, and it's going to be more of a risk, a financial risk for them to take on something that, is, if it's still questionable in the trucking industry, it's going to be a higher questionable situation for a smaller company, is what I'm saying. So it's not even at this point that I'm saying, OK Produce shouldn't be the lead on this. But to drop all the funds into one business because they have the larger amount of trucks also means you might be missing out on the smaller businesses. What are we saying to that? I guess I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you didn't hear that part, Ivanka. So there is still funding. It's not 100% of this funding going to OK Produce.
Yeah, I heard that about
Okay.
1.5 or maybe less than 2 million would be left over for other people. So back to the question of you're coming forward with this project, but out of this project that we're discussing today, how many of the trucking companies know about this one before you're asking us to put a seal of approval on just one business that would be part of this plan?
Yeah, I mean, we did. I can't. I don't have the list in front of me, but we did outreaching. We shared this information out with trucking companies that operated within the community. We never received any applications with the existing program, and so that's the only reason why we're here today. We're talking about.
Yes, with the existing program. So my question is, before we are approving this with one business, has this project that we're looking at today been shared out with going back to maybe some of those same businesses that were like, can't look at the original CERT measure? Has this been taken back out to them? Or is this the easier route because you found a business that can leverage this money with other assets that they already have to put towards this, right? Like this is a leverage to funding that they're already ready to invest, which makes sense. I get that. But we want to make sure that we're not leaving out businesses that possibly might be agreeable to this plan, but are a lot smaller and may not even have the leveraging available. Like Kimberly's not on this call today, but I know that she has led the finances of a small business trucking company with her and her partners. So there's a piece here that's not sitting well. So can you answer that? Like, has this specific program that we're looking at today been shared out to the same folks that you said weren't interested in the first program?
Ryan, if I might jump in with a little bit of info there. Ivanka, we have spoken with several local fleets about this concept. I can't say that the exact draft plan has been shared because it is just a draft. And so we can't really put it out there other than to the CSC and the community members attending the meetings. But we have spoken in a lot of those outreach conversations about what would it take? Could we get you to make that leap of faith? And if so, what would you need? And I think that's where we really came to the conclusion of this project plan that we're proposing being successful in our eyes, because that feedback we did get from a lot of those fleets was we need a lot more help if we're going to transition, and we need that security of the old truck. With that being said, I think OK Produce, obviously is already planned out a transition of their fleet and is ready to start moving. I think that there are still, in the conversations that I personally have had with fleet owners in the Fresno area, they have a lot of the concerns that Bill shared with us today in, will the equipment actually be able to function in my job? Like, I just don't know. I don't even know if I want to take the risk of having the truck here and it like not even being able to function. So one of the things that we concluded with those conversations, and we've seen happen in other areas, is if one, and OK Produce, I mean, I know we've been calling them a large fleet, but they have a total of 80 trucks. There are trucking companies out there with 800 trucks. So I consider OK Produce to be more like a medium-sized fleet. But if they're willing to get those trucks out there, then other businesses can then connect with them to get information, or even just come and see the trucks, or even drive the trucks before they can finally transition and feel comfortable with making that move. and I think, and maybe Ryan can speak to this as well, but I believe there are funds in other CERT measures that are also not moving as fast as we would hope. And if this project plan is approved by the community and moves forward, and we see a huge interest in it, I believe there would be some availability for potentially looking at reallocating funds to add more money to the truck measure. Ryan, please stop me if I'm wrong on saying that, but
no, you're absolutely right. No, I mean, okay. Yeah, that's definitely something that we would, if that were to be the case, we see a lot of interest from this, that we would definitely, bring it back for the CSC to have more conversation about it.
So for the amount of money that OK Produce would be considering participating in, the amount that's left could get us started with other smaller local businesses in the community. And then if we do see a greater interest, we can always come back to the committee and discuss that reallocation of funds to help, fund as many as possible.
And what is the average of an EV truck? Because what is 1.5 million really going to cover for somebody else's leftovers?
Yeah, so that really varies depending on the truck. Obviously, a Class 8, a large truck like what OK Produce is getting, is going to be more expensive, probably somewhere around 450 to 500,000 total dollars. And the proposed project plan would be funding 90% of the eligible cost, up to 500,000. Now, when we talk about our smaller fleets, our smaller businesses that would be suitable for an EV truck, we're probably looking at trucks in the community that are much smaller weight classes. So more of our local delivery type trucks that are going to be like a Class 5 or 6. They're a smaller box style truck, a delivery style, not necessarily a large Class 8 pulling a trailer. In that case, the truck cost is going to be much less. So yes, the smaller trucks, we could definitely fund several with that remaining funding. If it's all Class 8s, then it could potentially be a much smaller number.
That makes sense. And the follow-up question to that would then be, what is the analysis that's been done on the classifications of trucks that are in 617? So which classification is actually the one that's the most highest polluting? And is that the OK Produce trucks? Or is there a classification that is a higher polluter that we should be focusing on? Like, to me, those are the details that set you up for the correct type of guidelines going into the program.
Yeah, definitely a great question. And I think right now the challenge is that the fleets that we would be looking at funding are fleets that are in compliance. So they're running diesel trucks that are compliant with the 2010 emission standard, which means they're really pretty clean. So that then means, in order to address the question that you're presenting, we would have to look at miles traveled. However, a larger truck, while it might be doing much more miles per day, it probably is also going a little further, meaning outside the community and then back into the community at the end of the day. Where our smaller trucks, while they may not pollute as much because their engines are smaller, they're carrying a lighter load, they are usually staying much closer to home base. So a majority of their miles are going to be within the community or very close to the community boundaries. So I think it's a little bit hard to compare when we're talking about the different weight categories, because the type of work they do is very different. And that does result in a difference in their pollution. But at the end of the day, I think we should also consider that any diesel truck traveling within the community is putting out diesel PM and other pollutants that an EV truck would eliminate 100% of. It's also about getting fleets comfortable with the technology and helping the technology to progress forward. So while we may not see the best bang for our buck in terms of emission reductions right now, if we want to achieve that moving forward, we've got to get companies comfortable with the technology. We need to help get the technology into the area and have other businesses see that it will work, it can work, and then also help the manufacturers in continuing to develop the technology so that it can be applicable to all vocation types.
Thanks, Janine.
You're welcome.
I do say, I know while you're saying a bang for the buck, but one of the main concerns that we do have is, as the community, which is going to be the most reduction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can explain the VMTs, and that makes sense. If the ones that are staying closest to home in this boundary might be smaller engines, but if they're more concentrated in their usage, then that should be looking at who's putting out the most PM in diesel emissions in the boundary that is already oversaturated.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Number two, the funding source that we're talking about, is any of this money even going to be going towards the infrastructure, or else the whole conversation is for nothing?
Yes.
Like, how is any of this funding allowable for
Yes.
Infrastructure purposes first, not just the purchase of the trucks?
Yeah. So there is money for infrastructure. It's not the truck pot of money, but it's the infrastructure pot of money. And the community does have that pot. So we do have funding available. We have had that open and available as well with the existing program. So yes, we do definitely have funding for anybody within the community, even if they're not receiving funding from us for the purchase of an EV truck, there is still money for infrastructure. So that definitely is available. It's just two different technical pots of money, two different program guidelines, but we definitely work closely with an interested fleet to help them get through the process and make sure that the timing is correct, because it does take time for infrastructure to be engineered. You know, they got to work with PG&E and get all the engineering done as far as permitting and all that stuff too. So we definitely help with them with that to access our funding, the community's pot of funding for that, as well as any other funding sources outside of the Air District that could be stacked for infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Natalie?
Yeah, I have like a question just regarding like project goals, because I know that this project is being based off like the San Diego truck pilot program. And as I was reading the goals, like I noticed that one of the main goals of the San Diego program was to make sure that both like medium and heavy duty trucks are gonna be 100% ZEV 5 years. And so I'm just wondering, with all the funding going to like OK Produce, like how that's gonna be achieved, especially if a large portion of the funding for ZEV is gonna go to OK Produce, like kind of tackle what Ivanka said, like how are we gonna help like these smaller fleets convert, and like essentially like also what's the goal if this amendment were to pass? Like, is South Central Fresno also gonna follow like this plan the way like San Diego did in terms of having that 100% conversion rate in 5 years?
Yeah, so I believe we sent out the draft proposal for the project plan, but if not, I think Nancy could help us get that sent back out. We did not include every single aspect of the San Diego's plan in the proposed draft. The 5-year commitment is not there. San Diego focused specifically on port trucks, and port trucks do have a different transition timeline to go to zero emission. So some of the things they have in their plan are very specific to drayage or port trucks. So we did omit some of those. We definitely tried to get the main concepts of a displacement concept meaning there's a diesel truck that's identified that's currently doing routes within the community, and we're going to displace those miles with the zero emission rather than the actual replacement, the crush and replacement. So I think the couple of points that you mentioned, Natalie, about the 5-year transition and the different heavy duty and medium duty, those aspects were not included in our proposed draft. We focused a little bit more on just kind of getting the process started, like that first kick of the ball, let's get things rolling. And then once we get people interested and we get some trucks in the community and people see them driving around and other companies say, oh, hey, did you see OK Produce down the street? It's got a bunch of electric trucks. That looks really cool. Let's go check it out. It kind of maybe, I don't know, poke the hornet's nest, so to speak, get people interested, get people, you know, conversing with us, get them connected with us. And then, as we mentioned before, if we do see a big spike in interest, we can always look at reallocation of funds to increase the amount available for all of those other companies as well.
Janine?
Yes.
You know, the only problem is some of us, not based on how many trucks we have, but about how much volume we sell, we have to start transitioning 2024. Every one of my trucks is a Class 8. And I have a truck stop where all day long, most of the trucks, whether they're a Class 8 or 7, they still have the same size engine. So I don't buy that. As far as I don't have a problem with, you know, OK Produce or anybody else. But what Ivanka is saying, I think, is that we need to have money available because there's many of us that have to start transitioning next year. And it's why should we have to reinvent the wheel and take all these chances? You know, where if we could, I would buy 6 trucks if you gave me the program, but I never was offered that program, and that bothers me. That no one called me, and you know, our trucks idle, you know, tankers with, or what I was trying to get at is trucks with power takeoffs, whether it's a garbage truck or whether it's a fire truck or whether it's a tow truck or whatever. There's many trucks that use PTOs, and many of them, when they're using the PTOs, are idling, and that's when we have problems with emissions. So yeah, you know, I would like to see before the, you know, our final goal is to see some trucks in different vocations being utilized, you know, where you know, if it didn't work, we don't lose our business, you know.
Yeah. So Bill, I'm a little curious about your 2024 compliance date, because I thought, and I may be wrong, but I thought that the 2024 for priority fleets, which is what you are, is that any new trucks you purchase must be ZEV, but it's not that you have to start replacing your existing trucks, because SB1 allowed like a 13-year time frame on existing diesel trucks before any regulation could come into play on them.
There's two programs. There's two programs. One, you take each category and you take a certain percentage out of that category as the years go on. And then there's another program where you just pledge that every single truck you're going to buy from here on are going to be zero emission. So there's 2 programs on that. And depending which one you choose, granted, it's maybe minor in the first year or 2, but and then that's why I'm asking about the whether if the PTO trucks are going to be exempt, well, then that takes a lot of strain off. But you know, I see 1,000 trucks a day going around the corner, you know, next door to fuel, and to start transitioning them, you know, something needs to start soon, you know. So I think there's if the same program was available, you know, to more companies, I don't know about before knowing about that you could keep your old truck while because this is what happens. For example, you have Nikola, all their battery trucks got called back because they had a fire. So if you buy electric truck and the manufacturer calls them back, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
That's why a lot of companies have been slow in starting to transition over, because you can lose your whole business. But
yeah,
this idea of being able to keep your old truck, that makes a big difference.
Hey,
yeah.
Bill, can I jump in with a thought on that particular point?
Sure.
Because I totally get where you're coming from, right? And the goal here is that this would be, potentially an option for more people down the road if we can demonstrate that it's an effective way to get more electric trucks on the road. And so we have a project that we can use as a real life example of here's exactly what we want to be able to do, and get the project plan approved, because we really need to have a project and we need to have the framework for what this is going to look like, but certainly wouldn't be to exclude you from participating in something similar once we can get this verified and approved by CARB as an eligible category here, which is exactly what we're trying to do. So it's not just to provide any sort of special favor or treatment, but these folks are the ones that are in a position right now where they're ready to kind of press the go button, provided that there's a funding mechanism to get this done.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, depending on how much money is available, because I think there's probably a lot of companies that would like to start the transition. I mean, 2024 is not very far from now. Mm-hmm. And I think that, like I've said before, tractors are easy. Unhook the tractor, go over to Ryder and rent another one, and hook it up to your trailer. But when I have trucks that have 6 pumping systems, I go to Quick Lubes, and every gallon of oil that you put in your car is pumped into those above ground tanks. Since the underground tank laws went into effect, there's a lot of convol tanks around. So, pumps on tanker trucks are, very prevalent. Yeah. So,
the other thing I might suggest, Bill, is like, if you've got thoughts on what equipment might work in an electric capacity and in that regard, like, come in and meet with us and let's talk about what a project like that could look like.
Yeah, that's fine. But
yeah, because I mean, we've got
just save enough money for it. I don't want to wait for another to go through CARB and 2 years later have the funds available. If you have funds available, that's all I'm asking, is to have funds available, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Sounds good.
You give all you want to one company, but I don't think that's in the best interest of the community to invest all your money into one company without spreading it out.
Yeah. I agree with Bill. Yeah. I agree with Bill. I mean, if this money is supposed to go to trucks, like, we're talking as if this is money, the priority is as if this is a pilot program, when we're supposed to be doing what is best for the community impact. So if we have a variety of trucks, if it's going to be hesitation because of the risk, then why isn't this the opportunity for people to see if for one truck that it's a risk they can take on, versus I'll never know until I wait to see for a bigger company to see how it turned out for them.
Yeah, these are all hard conversations, and I think a lot of us are speaking in hypotheticals, what may happen, what could happen. We may have a lot of interest, we may have no interest, and we don't know. And I think the only concern is if we aren't able to start showing projects how this can work. I have a compliant fleet. I may have 18 years before I have to get rid of a truck, and so I'm not going to rush out with technology. Bill made an excellent point about Nikola and basically them having to recall every single one of their trucks. If that was a single owner operator and that was the truck that I have, I'm basically out of business. So
see, that's why your program makes sense, where you could keep the old truck. And I haven't been aware that was the way it works. Every time I've gotten any money, I've had to scrap the old truck.
Well,
I mean,
and that's why we have to do this special process, because it's outside the box. And we really can't do that except through this special pathway with our AB 617 community, but it still has to go through that approval process with CARB. So, and that's kind of what today is about, is this a concept that the community wants to move forward and try to get approved by CARB so that we can implement it. Otherwise, it will be a traditional replacement of some fashion. But I think we've already decided that in and of itself is not feasible when we talk about transitioning to zero emission.
That's what I'm saying is, if you had this available to anybody else that wanted to work with 1 or 2 trucks, just if you have the funds available, that's all I'm asking. I'm not trying to.
No, Bill, that's exactly what we're saying. It would be available. So I just want you to be very clear on that. It would be available under this scenario.
I could order a truck on your program right now. I don't have to wait to go through California and have the wheel reinvented.
If we are able to submit a community identified project plan to CARB and they approve it, then there would be a program, yes.
There would be funds available?
There would be funds available.
For how much? How many trucks?
Well, at least $1 million, but like, that's what we're saying. Like, there's an opportunity. Once it's approved, we can evaluate. If there was a lot of interest, we can bring it back to the CSC, evaluate where the funds are, and whether or not the community steering committee would be supportive of transferring some of the funds from other measures, similar to what we've done in the past.
That's what I'm talking about. Then it's not available for $400,000 or $500,000 a truck. What you're telling me is not available because, there's a demand for all the funds in this community, so, to be fair, I mean, I'll commit to 6 trucks if you want to do it today.
Okay. We could talk about it more. Eric, I see you've had your hands raised too.
I just have some general questions. We're talking about allocating to OK Produce a certain amount of funds. And what percentage of the remaining funds would go to, or what percentage of the funds would go to OK Produce, and then what would be remaining? In other words, are we depleting the coffers, or is this just a 20% of the available funds? What is the idea here?
There would still be $1 million left as a percentage. So there's 7.5 million right now. This would be 6.5.
So you're allocating 85 to 84% to one company for this program. My other question is, of the funds, how much is coming from the state?
It's entirely, it would be community air protection incentive funds.
So under the ACF rules, if you receive funds from the state after January 1 of 2024, these vehicles do not go towards your compliance numbers in the ACF, correct?
I believe that is correct.
Right. So in other words, if you don't spend this money before the end of the year, then even the fleets that do take advantage of this money will be at a disadvantage at their compliance level.
If they have that requirement. So the inability to use a state funded vehicle to meet compliance is for as long as that vehicle is under contract. We're proposing a 3-year project life, and with the transition schedule and the 18-year lifespan that the ACF has in place for transitioning a diesel truck out, it could feasibly work so that the truck that we fund is off of contract and essentially eligible to be considered as part of the compliance strategy down the road. So no, it probably, if you have trucks that needed to be changed out, say in 2025, it's probably not going to meet that need. But if you have additional, obviously your whole fleet's got to be transitioned at some point. So somewhere down the road, those trucks will count, just not at the very beginning.
I mean, one of the...
I guess my final question would be the verbiage of what we're proposing here, so that in writing somewhere, And I'm just looking for the opportunities that we might be able to capture. You're proposing that we will have no destruction requirement within 18 months. I know that's not a hard number. I'm just putting it out there. And we would be able to purchase EV vehicles up to 90% funding. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
90% funding with no downside. But we just have to pull the trigger within 4 months so they don't hurt our numbers going into 2025.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Ivanka? Ivanka, we can't hear you.
Is that any better? I'm sorry, I'm having technical problems.
Yeah, we
Yes,
can
we
hear you
can
now.
hear you.
Okay, sorry. The question I have is, after this call, where are we as far as next steps? And is the plan, I don't think I'm comfortable with saying if your answer, Ryan, to both Bill and then again to Eric is like as if they wouldn't be able to be a part of what you're about to submit to CARB because you've already named OK Produce, and naming the actual business to me should be what comes after the approval with CARB. Like that should be the blank that's open to this new program that we're discussing. Like, because it almost seems like you're filtering out the opportunity to a lot of other businesses and you're submitting for approval with only one business. So that's...
But yeah, the approval would not be, we would not submit a project plan for an OK Produce project. It would be a general, like what Janine dropped in the, or I'm sorry, what Nancy dropped in the chat. It's a general project plan. It's not specific to OK Produce.
But this presentation today has let me know that you already have your eye on one business only. And that's concerning. Like that's more than just the example because of how things work in this area. You already have a plan beyond the plan that we're supposed to be talking about. So I'm concerned that there would need, normally you will hear me saying we need engagement with community, but engagement with the businesses and the trucking cannot stop just because this is ready to be submitted, or that's concerning. If Bill is feeling like if it were available and then the only thing you're able to come back is, well, we can see where we can scratch some other money out of some other CERPs. No, out of this bucket, it needs to be discussed. That's my last comment for today. I know we're already past time. Go ahead, Venice.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm curious what other funding sources are available that could change the way that you've structured this so that the AB 617 is not funding 80 to 90% and leaving just, you know, $1 million left for anyone else who might be interested.
Yeah,
so that's my first thought. The second thing is, should we not be, as I think it was mentioned earlier, trying to prioritize the trucks that actually are identified as producing the most emissions and starting with engaging them? I mean, if there's a mandate and people will have to make this change, I see this opportunity of, you know, you don't have to scrap it right away as really a nice open window that allows people to sort of slide into it and continue to have opportunities to, yes, support EV, but, you know, perhaps not, and look for other alternatives. And so should we, as the AB 617 committee, be really trying to focus in on where are the highest emissions coming from, and can't we start with those as a priority? And I think the final thing I'll say is that, you know, the hope that other businesses will see this OK Produce model and want to jump on board. I don't know that that is a successful and meaningful strategy. I think it's full of hope, but where's the where's the likelihood that businesses who are not currently interested are going to want to jump on board? So is there another strategy that we're looking at, given that there are some structures in place, like the need and the reality of having to transition? And so I feel like this is an example of the problem of only offering incentivizations and not having any other way to get people to the table. So we are offering this as an incentive. We're saying, here's a pot of money, here's some available funds for you, and we're not getting any reaction, you said. And so what are the other options that we have if this one is not working?
Well, the other option is what has already happened. There's regulations that have come out, and there are timelines established in those regulations to force people to transition. But it may be, versus what we heard through the SERP development process, a desire to see these now, it may be in 18 years or, whatever the timeline for, having to replace those vehicles. It may be, 5, 10, years before you're starting to see those changes when those people will be required to do it. And that's why incentives has and historically and still plays an important role in enticing people to make transitions earlier than they would have otherwise liked to or wanted to. And with AB 617, wanting to focus in, wanting to make transformative change in these communities to the maximum extent possible. I mean, when you're talking, me, having grown up in the South Central community, going to Edison, like friends, family, raised in the community, those are things I was looking for. Like, if we're talking about a fleet, that they're not proposing a 90%, they're proposing, to put in more money than, what the project planned. So you're getting more trucks, from that project, trucks that, right now are diesel they idle in the yard, they travel the highways, they travel the streets, delivering, produce products to Valley Grocers. That's the company that we're talking about. And so, I understand what everybody's saying too, and the concerns that are being raised. I don't want to diminish or those in any way, but it's just, wanting to start the transformative change for the community. Like, when we put the money in there, it was to see as many electric vehicles in the community as possible. And removing dirty diesel trucks that produce toxic chemicals. And so, yeah, I mean, we have a project here where we'd be able to start that process now. Doing the outreach, reaching out to those other companies definitely is something that we have to do. And, we may get interest, we may not, we don't know. And so that's the challenge. And that's why this is always, the CSC members have to weigh all those things in making these kind of tough decisions on what's best for the community, what's going to benefit the community the most.
And just to sort of add on to that, just to sort of clarify, this is almost a $30 million project in total, and so leveraging, we're proposing to leverage the $6.5 million of the AB 617 funding to really pull off what is going to be a transformative sort of showcase project for the Fresno community. You've got this willing business. They are, for all intents and purposes, a local small business. I know that there's varying degrees of small business, but they're willing to step up. They're willing to invest in the community, in the trucks. Yes, this project is not, it's not going to cure all of the truck issues in the South Central community. Like Ryan said, 100%, we're going to continue to outreach to those small businesses, but we are very, very confident that this will become the roadmap to zero emission, and particularly within the South Central, Fresno community. This could be a showcase project, not only in South Central Fresno, but in the entire state for the transition to zero emission vehicles. You don't see many companies investing right now in this many zero emission trucks. So the idea was to leverage this funding from 617 against all these other funds, against a huge portion that the company is investing themselves in, not only the trucks, but in the infrastructure development to make this project work. They're fully invested. So that was the idea behind this, to really make this a showcase for the South Central Fresno community.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, Derek, and then Dr. Curry.
First of all, I'd like to thank all the people from the Air Board who've considered this option. I mean, this is to remove the barrier of entry in such a way that you guys are proposing is huge. And that being said, I think it's appropriate to give maybe some time for other businesses to the point of the people in this committee that have said something, time to jump on board. And the reason why I say that is removing the disposal barrier for even us. I mean, I have a PO sitting on my desk for 10 Nikola trucks, but if I knew I didn't have to get rid of 10 trucks and could commit to something like this, I would spend it. That's $3.5 million. So I say that, and I think to echo both Bill and Isabel's kind of notes here, I'm not saying OK Produce doesn't deserve the money, because they are investing a lot of money into their system. But I think there are, when you make this institutional change to the program, I think there are companies that might be able to step in and take advantage. So my concern would be maybe change the policy and then give it a month, 2 months, see who bites, and then if somebody doesn't, then give it to OK. Is that an option? Question.
Well, what we've seen, I mean, yeah. It's part of why we're here today is to talk and to listen to the feedback. When we do open it, if the community supportive of a project, it would definitely be a kind of a situation where we would look at all the people that were interested.
I mean, because we already have 2 trucks up and running, had the infrastructure in place. We've done it. We did it with our own funding and some other grant funding, but I didn't know this was even an option. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at, where it just seems like we're tipping the scales towards one company. And I understand that they invested a lot of money, but so did we. So and I think with this type of change, you are also giving advantage to some other companies that can take advantage. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Dr. Curry?
No, I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Curry. So I guess, outside of OK Produce, I don't, are there any concerns with the actual project plan? I mean, or is there a desire not to move forward with, the project plan itself, like the concept of it?
I'll say that I think I need more time to review it, because some of the main goals that I thought would be part of this, like San Diego's, are not included at all, and that's concerning to me. And I am still concerned with the fact that if there is no guideline of some type of limitation, we don't mean it has to be anytime soon for a scrap, but just to leave it indefinitely for the life of a good use truck that doesn't have to be turned over. That's an extreme that I am not comfortable with. Whereas I've heard those from the trucking representatives on here that if they are good and they are up to par as they currently are, then you want to keep them. But to not have some kind of backstop to when they have to be turned over, it's adding more trucks, but you're still able to pollute with the ones you currently have. And even to say that it's advanced clean fleet, we're 2010 standards and we're in 2023, so that's not a go either.
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the things that we would have to show. I mean, there has to be a reduction in vehicle miles traveled through the use of the electric vehicles, for the fleet itself. It wouldn't, but I understand what you're saying, Ivanka, establishing some time frame that the vehicles have to be scrapped to participate.
So just to put a point on that, one of the things that we want to do in the project plan is we want to provide enough detail in the project plan so that everybody's comfortable with that. I totally hear what you're saying. Leaving it completely open-ended is probably not, ideal. But on the flip side of that with these project plans is you don't want to be overly prescriptive so that it eliminates any of maybe some of the needed flexibility that will be needed down the road, depending on the fleet makeup or depending on the type of truck that you're talking about replacing. So I hear what you're saying, and I think we can go back and take another look at some language that would maybe be a little bit more prescriptive in terms of the destruction requirement, but not sort of hamstringing us unnecessarily to that point when we're trying to provide flexibility to maybe a single owner operator down the road might need a little bit more time than maybe a fleet who's already invested in electric technology, who maybe needs less time because they're already familiar and comfortable. And so having the flexibility in there, but I totally understand what you're saying about just leaving it completely open-ended is not ideal. I get that.
Any other comments, Bill?
Would there be any other, now that you have, this program, for example, could you go to CARB and get some money without using this money, perhaps? Now that you, maybe you get more money at the same time if it's, if it's that valuable. Would they have funds, or would they change their program without scrapping the truck? Now that they've seen how it worked in San Diego, and if it's going to work here, that maybe they have a program that would be similar to where if you use up this money, for OK Produce or whoever it might be, if there's more funding available for a similar program, right now, like these trucks are coming out and you don't even know if they're going to last. They haven't been in existence long enough. So, a company that has, 40, 50 tractors, it's one thing, but somebody that depends on every truck that in their fleet, I think that's been a big problem why some people haven't started changing over already. And the technology's, in the infant stages where it's not even there yet.
Hey, Bill.
But we have to go ahead and switch next year.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, like what we're told, there wouldn't be any other funding. Like the Moyer program specifically prohibits this. So that would be the only other funding source. And so it wouldn't be an option.
But maybe you could convince them, because it only makes sense. Now that you've had San Diego do it, you have Fresno do it, you could explain how much interest you had in the program. And then if you show, some of the recent, look at Nicola, they're what if you have 200 trucks in one company and they recall them all? Look what happened to the biggest battery bus company in the United States, bankrupt. and you don't even have the companies out there don't even have all the truck models available yet. It's still in the, we had 100 years of diesel, and we're not even into this battery or hydrogen more than a couple of years.
Yeah. No, hey, Bill, that we definitely took notes on that. We can talk to them. And the only reason I'm trying to wrap it up is because our interpreters have to leave, and we do have some Spanish speaking CSC members on, and definitely want them to be able to fully participate. So was there any other comments? Okay, so we will, let's see, Natalie, you got your hand up.
I just have one question. So, to my understanding, I know we received an email about the Fresno truck project plan, but I know it was just in the form of an email. Will we be getting a more detailed document, regarding what we kind of discussed here, or is the plan just in the form of the email right now?
The draft, what are you looking for, Natalie?
I guess similar to the example that was sent to us for the San Diego pilot program. Will we be getting anything similar sent like that?
Yeah, we can send something out to the CSC.
Okay.
Okay. I think the next action, we'll get that sent out. I think we can look at maybe some changes to address the areas for improvement that were recommended by the CSC members, and look to to discuss this at our September meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.